What's up, guys? It's Baker from Hauntcast. This is part 2 in a 3-part video series on milling foam tombstones, plaques, or signs. We're using the Shapeoko 3 CNC router to do all the work. We've already designed and exported the SVG file from Illustrator. Now we need to import that file into Carbide Create, which is free downloadable software from Carbide 3D. Set the feeds and speeds, export the G code, and this video is about just that. If you dig this video and want more where it came from, support us at patreon.com/Hauntcast. Also, make sure you stab that like button and subscribe. Let's get busy.
Hauntcast, radio for haunters and Halloween fanatics. Oozing with haunt news, reviews, how-tos, interviews.
Hauntcast.
Subscribe now.
If you're new to CNC, these are some terms that you should know. The x-axis. This is the router moving from left to right. The y-axis is moving front to back. The z-axis is up and down. The router moving up and down. The depth of pass or cut is how much material is being removed on each pass. So this is how deep the bit is going into the material each time it's passing through. The feed rate is basically how fast the router is moving on the X or Y axis, moving across the material. The plunge rate is how fast the bit is going down, or the router is going down into the material, so plunging into the material on the Z axis. The step over is the amount of the cutter's diameter that is engaged in the cut. So typically this should be about 75 to 80% of the cutter's diameter or less. And RPM is revolutions per minute, which is the speed that the router bit is spinning. First off, let's open up Carbide Create, which is a free download from Carbide 3D, the maker of the Shapeoko 3. Okay, once this is fully open, first thing we want to do is click on this gear icon. Those are the settings. By default, these are the last settings that I used. So we want the this artboard or this template here to be 12 inches wide, 9 inches high. The project that I'm cutting is 11 by 8.5. I just wanted to give myself a little wiggle room there. The stock thickness is 1 inch. By default, it's selected at the top. It should be. Lower left, what this means for a tool path 0, when we zero out the tool, which is the bit in router, we want to go from this corner here. So it will begin cutting this way. It's going to cut from the bottom left, and the tool will move out across the material. From the material, these are all the defaults that are set in there. Now, if you use these defaults, if you are cutting MDF and you do use the router bit that you buy from Carbide 3D, then all these presets are kind of there for you. It's a lot easier. Now, there's no preset for cutting foam, which I'm going to get on these guys about adding that preset here. But since there isn't one in here already, I'm just going to select MDF. We want to make sure that we have the correct machine. I am using the Shapeoko XXL. If you have another version, then you want to select that. The Retract Height I'm using as 10 millimeters. I've messed around with this. This is just what I like. The Retract Height is how far the bit after it makes a cut will come back up. You know, the router will move back up off the surface. So it will then move to the next position and then plunge down into the material again. Once again, I won't get into those specifics. So let's just say that just use 10 or something higher if you prefer, or lower if you prefer. For the units of measurement, I'm going to use inches. Us imperial dogs. That's pretty much it. We're all set there. We're going to click OK. Next thing we want to do is we need to open the file that we created. So we want to go down to this tombstone here. Tombstone plaque. This is the file. Oh, no. wrong. We want to go to Bella Tombstone because it's an SVG file. That's what we need. That's what we exported. All right, perfect. Here is the plaque for the tombstone with the text. Once again, if you exported without creating the pass for the text wouldn't appear. You wouldn't see any text there. It'd be unworkable. So next, we're going to select the text, and we want to click on Tool Pass. So click, drag across the entire area, and that will select all of the text within that area. We want to jump up and click on V Carve. Now what we are using is the V bit, the 302 V bit, which is a 60-degree bit. Now, we want to set the speeds automatically because these are all the defaults if we were cutting MDF. Since we're not, we're cutting foam, we need to make a few changes. My changes are this. For the depth per pass, we're going to do 080. Step over, I'm going to leave it by default because that's actually a good step over. The spindle speed, you can change the speed here, but it really doesn't matter. Recommended RPMs for this is 6,000. But once again, you have to set that manually on the Makita. Just dial it to 1 or as low as it will go. 6,000 is a little bit lower than the 1 setting. On the Makita, for the DeWalt, it's you can't get that low. Feed rate. For the feed rate, we want to change this. I'm going to change this to 50. And the feed rate is how quickly it will cut across the material, and the plunge rate is how fast it will plunge down into the material. For the plunge rate, I guess I'm going to do 10. Okay, you could play with these and try a few pieces of like scrap foam and just test these speeds out. You can't hurt by going a little slower, but if you go too fast, there'll be tear out, breaking off pieces of foam, or anyway, you set it better safe going a little slower than a little faster. Okay, once we have these these changes made, we want to click OK. Okay, now we want to name the tool path. Let's just call it text. Click OK. And now text appears. Now when we scroll over text here in this toolpath box, it will highlight that text. So the text is all set. We're good to go there. Now for the outer edge, you can just click this. You select it. It would be a contour. Now you have to select the maximum depth when you select a contour. So for the maximum depth, you use stock bottom. You can go a little deeper if you prefer, but you will cut into your wasteboard. Let's see, inside, no, you want, for anything that you're cutting on the exterior, you want it to be outside right. So it will cut around to the outside and to the right. The bit, we would definitely need to change the bit, and the bit would be a 201 end bit, which is a square tip. And then we can go through and make some changes here. We can do the same thing. We could do the step over, I'll leave the same. Spindle speed, once again, you don't have to even change that here because it doesn't affect it, because we have to manually set it on the Makita. The feed rate, the plunge rate on MDF and foam, like I said, I would just dial it down a little bit more for the foam because the foam is easier to cut through than MDF, but MDF is pretty easy to cut through. So for the feed rate, let's dial it down. Let's dial it down to like 60. The plunge rate, 12. I think 12 is fine. Okay, toolpath. We're going to put. We'll call this the plaque. And okay. So main thing in this video, we're just going to cut out the text to show you how that works. we want to see the toolpath simulation. Let's just go check it out on what it would look like on MDF. Show simulation. And now it's going to show you what it's going to look like when it's been milled. So this gives you an idea of whether or not your settings are correct. So that looks pretty damn accurate. That's what we're going for. All right, now, next step, save G-code. We want to call it Bella Tombstone again. And save. That's pretty much about it. Why don't we save this project as well? Let's save this. And let's make sure we're saving it to the correct file. CNC Tombstone project. And once again, let's call it the Bella Tombstone. As you can tell, my typing ability is very limited. Okay. There we go. Now we have everything saved. We have the G-code saved. We saved the project if we have to go back and make any changes to the feeds and speeds. And just to clarify, when we talk about feeds and speeds, let's hide the simulation. This is the feeds and speeds are done in with the toolpath. Okay, so when we double click that, that's that toolpath. It will open up, and this tool, these are the feeds and speeds. Just to clarify, okay. And you can play with these. This is not set in stone. You can adjust these as needed. If you would like the project to move faster, you can increase these to the maximum that you can until it starts to cause problems with tear out. And other than that, we're on to our next step, which will be opening this up in Carbide Motion and running the project. If you like this video on using Carbide Create to create G-code, please stab that like button and spread this video around like an STD. If you want more video tutorials and product reviews, please support us at patreon.com/Hauntcast, just like these kick-ass backers did. We'll finish this video tutorial series on milling foam plaques and tombstones with part 3, running the project using Carbide Motion on the Shapeoko 3 XXL. Stay scary, my fiends.